Hey there, Goa fans. This is Mark DJ Solitaire here with episode 88 of Retro Goa Explorations, my series in which I share in every episode one of my favorite tracks from the 1990s Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. And today for episode 88, a really special track, one I've really wanted to feature for a long time, and I've got some beautiful, beautiful insights about it from one of the three musicians who was part of this project. Um, I was listening to this just before filming and thinking, what the heck am I going to be able to say? I mean, you know me, I can always say something. There's a lot going on. It is one of the most incredibly rich, creative, magical, otherworldly tracks that I know. One that I've played a lot and that really conjures up a lot of the energy for me and a lot of the, imagery and sensations about what this kind of electronic music is capable of. Where, I'm reminded of that experience I've talked about before at this 1995 equinox party in Japan, where we were in the forest and on the side of a mountain, and there was clearing in the trees, and we're dancing under the moonlight and under the stars with this, fire there, and this, just thinking this has gone on for tens of thousands of years that humanity has danced together under the stars, both, anchoring where it is that we are while we're also connected to and aware of the vastness of life and things existing elsewhere. And that is absolutely the sensation I get every time I hear this track. There's a very clear imagery that comes to me with this one. I'll, of course, share what the producer told me. One of the producers, rather, what he had in mind for this one. But, and I still think it ties in. But anyway, we are going to listen to Tiny Little Engines by the Visitors. And so we've got three great musicians who are involved in this production in The Visitors. We have Andrew Till, the head of Harmonics, who graciously shared a lot of information about this incredible track. The recently departed Ollie Olson, a legendary musician, and Jeffrey Hales, also known as Rip Van Hippie. So I am going to share some of the amazing details that Andrew graciously provided about this incredible track, which we've both played at ZNA at the same year, different times before. So it was recorded at Ollie Olson's, the Harmonics studio, and Andrew says Ollie, Jeff, and I had been in the studio for a few days recording Reality Check. And I remember turning up in the morning and Ollie said, I don't like that track. So he deleted the entire session and sample bank and said, let's start the track that we want to write, which was Tiny Little Engines. I knew exactly what he meant. It was going to be our epic opus. By the way, luckily I had the last mix of Reality Check on DAT, right? And that did come out. So they worked for 5 days on the track. There are a lot of original samples. Andrew can't remember, obviously, all of them because it was recorded in 1996. I just remember that the hi-hat sounds on Tiny Little Engines was a sample we did of a match being struck, and then we reversed the sample. All this creativity, right? Instead of just pulling something that was pre-made. There is a spoken sample I remember Andrew telling me a while back, I think a couple of years ago when we were at ZNA, that says, let's freak out the Straits, which you can't really hear, but you can't recognize the words. But anyway, that's in there. He said, Ollie and I, right, Ollie and Andrew, were really into Steve Reich's music for 18 musicians. So that was a big inspiration in the way that the melodies spoke to each other. There are many layers of the lead SH-101 line, all doing something different, all talking to one another. And Ollie's programming was incredible in the studio. He had a unique sense of rhythm and melody. definitely two key components of this phenomenal track. Then just yesterday, right? So about 12 hours before filming this, Andrew wrote and said, the Jeff Rip Van Hippie reminded me that I had a final year student at the Melbourne Conservatorium of Music contacting me in 1997 asking for the score for Tiny Little Engines as he was going to orchestrate it for his final year piece. And he said it was probably just a MIDI file and likely just deleted because Ollie just deleted everything as soon as it was done. And said he was going to write the score himself then. And last night, the film clip was getting played in a cinema as a tribute to Ollie. So pretty amazing timing over here. Also, the track was played on the ABC, that's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, classical show, and John Peel played it on the BBC. We've all heard this track, I think, played out. Well, maybe not. If you haven't heard this played out, it is a whole other thing. And as I've said before, this music being played in context is a completely different story. Now, when I first got it, it was given to me on DAT. It was copied from the the Wizardry of Oz promo that I got just probably in August '97, and I might have received it on DAT earlier. And I remember that the title then was Tiny Little Engines of Creation. That's how it was provided to me. And Andrew told me that it had to do with the fact that his partner was pregnant at the time. And, he was thinking about, the tiny little engines of creation, like, here she is, she's this tiny little engine also. And it's, there's all this creation happening. So he said, that's her, that's you, he told her. So I also hear in this the kind of DMT machine elves and the kind of the machinery of the universe all coming together. And which I think is actually, consistent with what Andrew's saying. And I also hear particularly the tribal element that I was speaking about, dancing under the stars and so on. There's this imagery that comes to mind every time I play this and every time I hear it. And it has to do with really the timelessness of this trance dance experience, where humans are in nature and connecting with where we are and the great beyond. So as I said, there is a lot to this track. I don't know. I certainly can't speak about everything while it's going on because it's so multidimensional and so rich. So I'm going to do my best. It's also, for me, it's a very, very emotional track, and not emotional in the sense of like just emotion. It's like full system, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, kind of all at onceness. So let's get started with this absolutely incredible track by the Visitors, Tiny Little Engines. So right away, starting off with this radio noise, this is like, for me, that image that I had of, like the DJ sort of tuning into intergalactic stations. Love the rhythm, the noise, and then it just breaks into where there's those cool alien voices, as well as tribal voices, but just that beautiful bounce. And the notes. The minor second is the primary interval throughout the track. There's a little bit more going on here too. That sort of zap sound. Now, again, the combination of notes for me, it sounds really like an ancient tribal melody that we're sort of remembering from previous generations, and it opens up, for me, the whole track is like tribal harmonies and melodies that open up portals to cosmic communication. And then here, like all of a sudden it's like almost like there's this interference, or there's this tension of communication that needs to happen for the portal to open. Incredible bounce. I mean, it's uplifting, But it's also really, really deep. There's the repetition of that mantra, regularity of that rhythm, and that long drone just starts to fade a little bit there. And then that punctuated voice. And then all this cyber electric noise. So many things happening. Little rhythmic things. And we have a second layer, rubbery kind of lower layer. Listen to how pulse. And then those higher cyber electric sounds. Some of those whooshes that come in the track are massive. And then the voice-like inflection here of that. There's those voices communicating, like Andrew was saying, right? Like in Steve Reich. That whoosh ushers this in. This, for me, is like this ancient tribal chanting to sort of open up this magical connection internally and externally to the great beyond and mystery. The way you have the beautiful harmonic with all the electric tension and the anguish here. Primarily that minor second here. And they're just like this ancient chanting. So you have the chorus underneath, and then there's like the primary cry into the great beyond. And again, speak. There's just so much happening here. Just again, notice the organic and electric sounds. Love that. Noises from the darkness. Another whoosh. Just sweeps right through you. That tribal chant, that hypnotic drone, really getting you into that trance state. Again, that cool sample. And this is going to start to evolve now. The storytelling, I mean, it just goes beyond, goes without saying, it's just beyond the beyond here. So it's like, okay, now this melody is opening up after we've done the groundwork to really bridge the communication, and who's communicating with whom here is not necessarily clear, but there's this real message being transmitted here. After 4 repetitions, that riff evolves now. Really, like, this is the message. There's this like anguish and insistence and power, And then this great big whoosh is going to come through after the cyber electric noise. Notice the communication. The layering and the build-up. And that anguish, exclamation starts repeating. That drone-like effect as it keeps repeating. Drum build-up. It's like we're approaching the end of the, this cataclysmic explosion that builds up. Cosmic radio station now. This transmission is ending. Voices. I mean, that's not a piece of music. I mean, it's an experience. It's this transcendental combination and arrangement of sounds that absolutely, this is what music is supposed to be. Just opens up a portal to consciousness, to a certain way of seeing and perceiving and sensing reality. Very physiological for me. I get goosebumps every time I hear that track. And it's an occasion. It's not just like, I'm just going to put this track on. I've named a few tracks like that before, where really there's a level of respect that's required. Personally, I think there should be that with all of the events, and that's kind of lacking now. Where it's not just, hey, we're going to go out and go dancing. Having a ceremony, and you can beat somebody over the head with the ceremonial aspect as well, and then it loses its meaning also. But for me, this is an occasion, and it needs to be respected because of what this track is capable of opening. And for me, I always get a visual of Aboriginal dancers in the Australian wildback under the stars. And I see sort of Uluru, it used to be called Ayers Rock, very clearly in my consciousness, this illumination under the stars, and this dancing happening and this communication that's happening with other dimensions. And so you get this static electric kind of communication that comes down while there's that chanting and humming. So you have that human level, and then the sort of the communication that's happening on those other frequencies. And we're trying to dial it in, and there's that radio interference, and that's part of the whole, our capacity to be able to hear what's beyond through our, beyond our 3 dimensions and our 5 senses. And so there's this real interplay and connection to the entire field of existence. And when we tune in, sometimes there's distortion, and we get some of the message, we get the full message, and this track has all of it, with those whooshes, with the cyber electric sounds, with the rhythms, with the melodies, this ancient tribal combination of notes that really, in that repetition and in that dance, seems to open up this portal. I played this as a second to last track in ZNA in 2022, and for months I had in mind that I wanted to build up to this track. And the explosion that happened, and particularly when there was this one whoosh that came in, and I just did a boost on the treble for that whoosh because I just wanted it to come through a little bit stronger, and boy, did it come through strong. for people to have, I mean, really getting that, the energy, I mean, the celebration and that tribal kind of communion, serving something greater, I think is really, it's what I think this whole scene is about. And this track for me encapsulates it absolutely perfectly. Just beyond a masterpiece. And really grateful to have Andrew's beautiful insights that he shared. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you to the three great musicians for their incredibly inspired work in crafting this incredible piece of music. So I will let you hear the whole thing without my blabbering on about it. I'm Mark DJ Solitaire, wrapping up episode 88 of Retro Goa Explorations and leaving you now with the unbelievably iconic masterpiece by the Visitors, Tiny Little Engines.